Thank you very much. And thank you for having me here. And the institution that I represent, the European Investment Fund, for those of you who don't know us that well, we are the largest public venture capital investor in Europe. And we are in more or less 25%, 1/4 of all the venture capital funds and private equity funds in Europe. We dole out some 7 billion euros a year for equity funds, venture capital, private equity, but also infrastructure funds. And all of this means that we believe we have a special responsibility. We owe to the innovative companies of Europe to help them at all the different stages where they need access to finance, where they need access to capital. And in Europe, we do have all the ingredients to grow tech champions. We have excellent research. We have a very good industrial base. We have innovative ideas, but we lack the capital to be at the right place at the right time where the companies need to grow. Where they need to grow, where they need to go to the next stage in their development, where they need, for instance, to build a first plant, to demonstrate a product that they are developing. So we need to be there, and we see that Europe still faces a structural funding gap, in particular in the late stage and the growth capital stages of the development of the companies. It's not just an economic priority for us to bridge this gap, it's also a strategic necessity for Europe's competitiveness and for Europe's autonomy. And over the past years, we have worked very hard to strengthen Europe's venture and growth capital ecosystems, but mainly in the early stages of the company's development. We're supporting fund managers and we're supporting investors that back high potential companies across the continent. But it's not enough. Now we need to do the same. We need to take our responsibility as the European Investment Fund and do the same for the later stage and the growth space. So this is precisely why we have created a new program called the European Tech Champions Initiative. We launched it almost 3 years ago to catalyze larger funds, mobilize private investors also into these funds, and to strengthen Europe's capacity to finance scale-ups at the right level. And we started out with 6 EU member states who put money into this. We put money also as the EIF, as the EIB group. And over those years, those 2 years that has gone by, we have invested that into 15 what we call mega funds. So these are funds that can reach a first closing or a closing of 1 billion euro, either just around 1 billion euro, just below, but with the potential of reaching the 1 billion mark, or above it. And these mega funds that were not really there before in Europe. We had maybe a handful before. Now there's 15 mega funds supported by the ETCI. And those funds are now investing. They're invested already into 45 companies. And 11 of those companies are unicorns. So we see that it's working. And now we need to expand. So we need to expand to more member states. We're getting more member states into a second phase of the European Tech Champions Initiative. We will announce this very soon. And we are also expanding in terms of the size of the funds we want to support. We will also offer to the investors a mid-size window where we can also support funds that are not at that stage where they can raise 1 billion euros, but that they have the potential then to feed into the ecosystem of funds so that we lift the ecosystem in respect of all sizes of funds. And we still believe this is not enough, because to truly power the European tech champions, we do need to unlock the full potential also of private capital. And in particular, here we see a growing role of institutional investors, but also of corporate investors and corporate venture capital, such as yourselves. And in order to do that, we will create a pan-European platform under the ETCI with more options for investors, so that we can deliver options to the private investors that fit their risk appetite, that fit their wish to support specific sectors. The European Tech Champions Initiative, as the name says, supports tech, but it supports tech in the broadest sense. It's digital tech, it's AI, it's green tech, clean tech, it's the energy sector, it's biotech, it's health tech, and so on. And we want to be able to offer also co-investment opportunities at the fund level, at the level of the funds that we have now in our portfolio, but also eventually at the level of the companies that are being supported. And we believe that this, in building on the experience that we have already, building also on the due diligence expertise that we have built up over 30 years now of working in the European venture capital space, can give assurance, can give comfort to a number of investors that previously have not dipped their toes so much into the venture capital space. So we will need also, of course, an enabling framework for this. But I think it's really what will define our success is the partnerships that we will enter into, the new partnerships with new types of investors. And I think that you, as corporate VCs and institutional investors as well, like the pension funds and the insurance companies, the tendency is that you are no longer just participants in the ecosystem. You are becoming more and more system shapers, and you bring more than capital. You bring industrial expertise, you bring market access, and you bring the ability to scale innovation across the value chains, and really in the value chain mindset. And this requires moving from opportunistic investments to strategic long-term engagement, helping build ecosystems and not just portfolios. So we need bold investment, we need sufficient scale of capital, we need smart regulation also to ensure that Europe remains an attractive place to build companies, reducing the barriers, enabling risk-taking, and facilitating cross-border activity. But first and foremost, we need deep collaboration between the public and the private investors, between corporates and startups, and across member states. And this has already proved very efficient in several regions in Europe, where strong partnerships between public anchor investors and private capital have created resilient and dynamic ecosystems. I could mention a number of examples of this that I have seen while traveling the member states of the European Union. So a call to action, what we need now is alignment between the capital and innovation, between national and European initiatives, and between short-term incentives on the one hand and long-term impact on the other. If we succeed, the prize is significant. We can build a new generation of European tech champion companies that are not only globally competitive, but also deeply anchored in our European values and our strategic priorities. And at DIF, we remain committed to playing our role as a catalyst, as a partner, and as a long-term investor in the future and the future of tech globally. But the success will really depend on all of us. So let's move from recognizing Europe's potential. We've spoken a lot about that. And let's move to fully realizing it. Thank you.
I think you said that side because it'll be here. So thank you very much, Merete, for introducing that. And so we can dig into a little bit of what you mean now. This is a great room to be this message across, because sitting in the audience, I'm just looking here. I mean, there are representatives for some of Europe's largest companies and ones who have recently, we've seen really kind of recommitting to their corporate venture capital programs. So, very active investors, and not just from Europe, but obviously also coming in from Asia and the US and wanting to invest in this region. So it would be really nice that now that we have you here on the sofa, to kind of begin that conversation and to talk about what that partnership with, the EIF might look like in practice. So I would love to ask, just maybe to dig a little deeper into kind of what does good look like. What is, you've had 3 years of the European Tech Champion Initiative, and you touched on some of the successes that you're starting to see with unicorns and so on. If we roll forward sort of 5-10 years, paint us the vision of kind of what a good and functioning partnership and success would look like.
Thanks a lot, Maija. I think that where we see that let's start with the gap maybe before I move to what good would look like.
Yes.
Where we see that the gap is really there now in Europe and in terms of funding rounds is the funding rounds where you need 100 million euros or more, where the company is now at a stage where they need that size of investment. So we are lacking to an extent consistent, large-scale, risk-taking growth capital combined with depth of exit opportunities in Europe. So what I think would be, what we would be very happy if we could contribute to a situation in 5 years' time or so, let's say 5 years already.
Let's say 5 years. Let's be ambitious.
Is that European-led funding rounds of more than 200 to 500 million euros would be the norm rather than the exception, which it is now. That we have fewer forced moves elsewhere to get the capital. And here I don't want to say that there are not many good reasons why you would move your company elsewhere for reasons of development and reasons of customers and whatever business strategy you have. But the type of move where you move your company because you cannot get what you need in Europe. So fewer of those moves outside of Europe. And then we need to build up a proper European exit ladder, because the figures we saw that James put up there, Europe is not a sufficient part of that, let's say, at the moment. So we need to have this recycling of capital going on also in Europe to a larger extent.
Yeah. Okay. So great vision, and we'll dig into a couple of those, including the exits, in a moment. But I did want to ask briefly about specifically the Tech Champion Initiative, because I suppose I could be. A lot of people they hear a lot of initiatives come and go. I just wonder, what do you feel is different about this one, and what do you think that particularly corporate investors might get from this initiative that would be particularly good for them in terms of getting involved?
Yes, I think that what we have been trying to do, as I was explaining, is to anchor large, globally competitive funds in Europe with sort of a scale-up-first mindset, moving a bit away from the strong focus that we still need to have as well on the very early stage in the valley of death, let's say, that a young company encounters, and thinking about scale first in our activities. So we have selected top tier funds. Mm-hmm. And these are now building up the portfolio of fantastic companies in a number of tech sectors. And what we want to do, also helping to shape the market, is to open up the portfolio that will still be building up. I mean, we have now 45 companies, 11 or 12 unicorns. But as the investment period continues, we will have many more. And what we believe that we can offer is indeed the possibility of having different options. Either, of course, would be also very good to have more investors at the fund-of-fund level. Mm-hmm. We are now fundraising with member states, but let's see where we get to down the road. But that the funds present a good opportunity, the funds we have invested in present a good opportunity for co-investment, and more and more also the companies. So it's this type of platform approach that we want to
and obviously CVCs can play many parts. We know that more than half will invest in fund of funds. So that's also something that they do. But I wonder whether, did you have any thoughts on where CVCs can bring some of that particular expertise? Again, as you alluded to earlier, in that they are very good at connecting into supply chains, to customer relationships, to
Yeah,
manufacturing facilities.
indeed. No, I think alongside the VC and the growth fund, the funds, CVCs can really bring this aspect of building up the value chains, which of course you have an interest as well in building up value chains within your area of activity, and be real industrial scaling partners. I think that is a key aspect, and also be the first customers, offer use cases for the companies, and that I think is the sector insights and the pathways to the market and the commercialization is a key value that you
Yeah,
can bring.
it sounds like those would be some really good conversations to have also, with this group, who I know many of them have very sophisticated ways in which they're now able to sort of plug startups into their organizations. And again, that could be something to talk about how that works. Um, should we address that exits problem, because that is often something that is the big elephant in the room with Europe. We see a lot of people moving to listing really in the US, and how, from an EIF perspective, what are some of the most realistic levers that you can pull to kind of make a substantial change there?
Short of having let's say a proper European stock exchange, which is probably not in the cards, at least in the immediate future, I think we have other ways where we can bridge the gaps from late stage financing to listings and other types of exits. So we do, with our fund of fund approach, we do try to pick fund management teams that are somehow focusing on creating exits. It can be funds, and there are funds like this also in Europe, that are focusing on helping companies in the pre-IPO phase, with the actual listing, and also afterwards, because afterwards is actually a very sensitive period now for a company. So we can support fund management teams that have done this and have expertise in that and can hold the hands of the companies. And we can also help supporting funds that are specialized in acquiring startups or others, and developing them towards the access opportunities. So this is something that we really try to work with the best fund managers in this area. We're also thinking about potentially developing our engagement into continuation funds, so funds that are taking over the activities of an existing funds that has come to its end, and providing new opportunities for the investors. And I think all of this can help to avoid locking in of capital for too long, and that's what we are aiming at, to get this virtuous recycling
so
of
I suppose,
capital.
and I guess one of the things is to keep the capital moving, because especially when we're looking at some of those areas where Europe excels, these are deep tech areas where the time span for developing those technologies is so much longer, and you may need to have several stages of capital kind of stepping in at different times. So yeah, no, interesting to hear that you're thinking about that continuation piece. I wonder just whether we could touch on kind of where you think Europe's tech advantages are. I mean, I think at the moment we're seeing a lot of people coming to Europe to to make investments in areas like robotics and quantum and defense are definitely things that we're hearing a lot about. But I'm wondering whether you see some areas where you think Europe really has that opportunity to lead now if we get everything right.
It's the ones you mentioned. It's industrial processing in general, also beyond robotics. The defense space is not only about defense, it's also all the defense adjacent sectors that we're also very interested in. It's cybersecurity, It's other types of resilience, building up resilience in Europe, in an increasingly complicated geopolitical environment, as we heard before. And these are areas that we're certainly very much engaged in, but it's also the whole biotech, health tech, pharma space, which I think not only it's a very strong sector in the Nordics, where I'm from myself, but when I travel around Europe, I see also pockets in other European countries where health tech and biotech is really taking off. And I think that is an extremely interesting space to watch.
Well, you're definitely going to find people and representatives in this room from all of those areas. I wonder, just to kind of seed the conversations that are going to happen later on today, what is it that you would like to know, from corporate investors? I mean, what are the questions that you would like to be asking the audience, individually, collectively? What kind of feedback would be useful?
Well, I think for me, it's of course very interesting to know whether, do you think that we are on the right path in the EIF? Is the experience that we have, is it something that is interesting for you to join in potentially as we develop now the second phase of our ETCI instrument? We had a first phase with almost 4 billion. Now we'll see in the second phase how much we are able to raise, but is this something that resonates with the audience here? Because I think what we would like to see also corporate VC developing into is investor class that is acting a bit earlier also. I mean, in the earlier stages of technology and taking more scaling risk, and that is something that we think we can help with. We can help provide some comfort in order to mitigate some of the risks. But this is something that we are sort of developing still, and therefore it would be very interesting to hear what your views are and where you see that a partnership could be beneficial with this type of public investor that we are.
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, again, one of the really nice features of corporate venturing is that it is usually it's hugely collaborative. Everybody in this room is well aware that these great investments never happen in a vacuum. They're always a result of networks and sometimes really long-term partnerships, really patient capital, and all of that. So I feel there's a lot of fertile ground here. But I think I would say to the room, as Merete says, you're moving into the second phase. There's a lot of discussions to be had. So I guess I would sort of urge everyone to, if you have some feedback, then do kind of pass that on. And, we'll go on to, as was alluded to, corporate venture is at an inflection point where it's becoming an increasingly large part of the startup ecosystem. It's stepping up to take its place, and I think it can potentially be a good partner. But I think having the conversations to work out how that partnership happens is very important. So
I believe so as well. And I think one of the things that I think we have in common is that the corporate venture is often asked, are you more interested in the financial returns or more interested in the strategy of the corporate? And it's a bit the same for us, because we do have to, in our activity, we do have to yield a return for our shareholders. But on the other hand, we are of course also a politically driven institution and need to pursue EU policies in what we do. So we have this dual mission that is a bit similar.
Yes, I think you'll find a lot of that resonates with a lot of people in the room. Well, I think in the interest of keeping the program going, but thank you very much. Merete, we'll finish there, but there's plenty of conversations to be had. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.